Hello and welcome to Podcast for Students, a podcast brought to you by Jobs for Students. Jobs for Students is a free weekly newsletter which helps you find jobs around your campus as well as internships and graduate jobs. If you haven't already signed up, join 10,000 other students who have by going to j4s.careers. My third guest is Joe Seddon, the founder of the Zero Gravity app, a platform which helps tackle educational inequality by helping students from low opportunity backgrounds gain places at top universities by providing scholarships, support, and mentoring. Joe is a graduate of Mansfield College, Oxford, where he studied PPE. After graduating and with only £200 left of his student loan, Joe moved back into his family home and went to work building the Zero Gravity app. He later raised over £4 million in venture capital investment to scale the business. Joe was awarded the Diana Award for Education, has featured on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, and has even been awarded a British Empire Medal for his services to social mobility. Without further ado, let's jump into the episode with Joe. Hi Joe, so you studied PPE at Oxford. What was that like for you?
First of all, thanks for having me on the podcast, Mannix. Yeah, it was crazy doing PP at Oxford. I was sort of the first person in my family to go to Oxford University, and I grew up in a small town in West Yorkshire called Morley, where it wasn't necessarily even the norm to go to university, let alone go to Oxford. So I remember going through the application system and very much feeling like a fish out of water, having to deal with an admissions test, which I wasn't particularly well prepared for. There was a set of interviews in the kind of ivory towers of Oxford universities with very intelligent but rigorous academics, and it was a completely alien experience. And I remember like almost crashing and burning in my interviews just because I was so nervous and so out of my depth. My first interview actually went so badly at Oxford that I thought I had no chance of getting a place, and that actually made me relax in the rest of the interviews because I already thought I'd blown it. And that's probably how I ended up getting a place, because I actually relaxed and just thought I had nothing to lose. So I'm quite glad in retrospect my first interview went so badly. And when I started at the university studying PPE, it was a very kind of like life affirming moment for me, because I kind of defied the odds to get a place at Oxford, and I thought, no, wow, this is my chance now to really step up my game and kind of go to the next level, build a network of people I would otherwise never come across, be able to connect directly with some of the academics whose books I'd read. And I just tried to kind of lap it all up. But like a lot of people, ran into some of those classic problems you face when you go to a very prestigious university, having come from a very different background, which is a feeling of kind of imposter syndrome. There's some of the kind of social mobility guilt as well, of having kind of almost like betrayed your roots by going to like live in a very different place amongst a very different group of people. So I kind of ran into those classic problems and had to find a way to navigate those whilst I was at university.
Wow. And how did you sort of navigate those problems?
It takes time. I think like university is a sort of coming of age moment, I think, for the vast majority of people, but especially for those people who are from very different backgrounds to the university that they go to. So I sort of wrestled a lot with my identity in my first year at university, thinking, do I want to be seen as a kind of like gruff, direct speaking northerner, or do I want to try and blend in with the sort of like posh Oxford crowd? And so eventually I kind of decided that I wanted to make sure that I was loud and proud about being from Yorkshire, that I kind of exuded my Yorkshire identity, but still didn't kind of stop myself from being part of and engaging in some things from outside my background. So I'd still go to all the kind of like champagne and chocolate style events, because even though it was very different from the culture which I grew up in, I didn't want to miss out on some of the opportunities of going to university. So it takes time to sort of find a sense of identity, but I was lucky that I had a fantastic group of friends, and that really helped in terms of creating a sense of belonging, because there was other people who were going on a similar journey to me of kind of working out who they were at the university.
Sure. Wow. And what college was it at Oxford? And I always ask, is there anything special or any folklore or anything that you only know because you went to that college? Is there anything special in that college?
Sure. So I was at Mansfield College, Oxford, which is, I think, still the smallest college at Oxford that admits undergrads. And it was one of those colleges where it's a bit like school. You kind of know everybody in your year and also in the kind of younger and older years as well. So it's got a really nice community of students. And the thing that's distinctive about it is it has the highest representation of state school students and students from low income backgrounds. So when I was at Mansfield, I think roughly around 85% of all the students there were from state schools, which compared to the Oxford University average was quite dramatic. Like when I was at Oxford, it was just over, it was like roughly 50-50 state private, but just maybe slightly over in terms of state schools. So Mansfield's a bit of an outlier in terms of being a college with a very different culture and kind of prided itself on kind of identifying hidden talent within the state sector for places at Oxford University. And that was very sort of empowering because I got to meet all these talented people who weren't given opportunity on a plate and had sort of defied the odds to get into Oxford. But it also made me think, how do it's clearly possible to create the one college at this university, which seems a bit more representative of the country. How do we do that across university as a whole? And how do we do that across all UK universities? And going even further, how can we make some of the top employers in the country look like that as well? So it kind of gave me a sense of what was possible. Previously, people thought, no, it was always going to be the way that Oxford would be dominated by the privately educated. But I think the Mansfield College model didn't have to be true. So it was a kind of inspiring moment for me and was probably one of the things that led me to found Zero Gravity when I graduated from university.
Sure. And you were saying there the Mansfield College model. Was there anything you noticed? Was there any way that Mansfield was different in identifying talent, in the state sector? Or
I think they saw it as a strategic priority for the college rather than just window dressing. They took the issue seriously. One of the big philanthropists to Mansfield College, who's actually an investor in Zero Gravity, is a guy called Guy Hans, who's a leading private equity magnate in the UK, and he was at Mansfield College, and he made it a big strategic priority for Mansfield. That if they wanted to benefit from his philanthropy, he wanted to see them revolutionise the way they did admissions, and that just created a drive within the college to actually just think differently about how they do admissions and recruitment. Whilst a lot of other colleges, I think 10 years ago, saw social mobility as just kind of like a tokenistic thing, a bit of a box ticking exercise. And you say you care about it, you do a couple of things, but you don't really think fundamentally and deeply about how you change your processes to get hidden talent. So I think Mansfield just cared more because of those sort of because of the influence of Guy Hans and the culture, which then was seeded by some of the other people who came in and ran the college, and that kind of care is now seeped out to the wider university to the degree that Oxford has fundamentally transformed since I was there. It's gone from being 50-50 state private to more like 70-30 nowadays. So change is possible, and I think Mansfield shows that you can have a pocket of change within an institution that can lead to kind of that contagion effect where people see the results and think, I'll have a bit of that as well. Like maybe we can do things differently.
Wow. And chat to me about Zero Gravity and what led you to find that. And I know you said that you had the option of going into sort of the corporate world and you decided to start Zero Gravity instead. So how did that come up with?
Sure. So I always wanted to be a tech entrepreneur growing up. It was sort of a bit of a dirty secret, but when I got home from school when I was younger, I used to listen to all these podcasts about technology and what was going on in Silicon Valley, and I sort of taught myself how to code. And it wasn't really something that a lot of people in sort of Morley and West Yorkshire were doing, but that was my passion. I sort of kept it secret from everyone, and but I knew that was what I wanted to do in the long term, because I wanted to build products that would transform people's lives and create benefit to the world. And I'd seen how technology could be a force for both good and evil. And I wanted to build products that would be a force for good. So when I graduated from university, I turned down my corporate job offers and I actually moved back home to West Yorkshire, back in with my mum and little sister, which I'm not sure they were too happy about at the time, having 21-year-old Joe back at home after university. But I sort of gave myself 3 months to try and launch a tech startup from my bedroom. And I just reflected on the problems that I'd faced in my own life. Now, how do you get into a top university? How did you get into a top career? And I thought there's so much more that can be done with technology to try and solve those problems. So I set out to try and create the first real tech solution to identifying top talent from low-income backgrounds and powering it into elite institutions. And that's how Zero Gravity was born. It was really difficult at the beginning because I had 200 quid left for my student loan, which was my sort of startup capital to get going. And that doesn't get you too far, in all honesty. Like, it can give you some of the fundamentals in terms of, buying a domain name, getting some web hosting, and buying some different software packages. But a lot of the first 9 months was just about bootstrapping and putting my own time and effort into trying to find a way to make this work. And we just built momentum through that period, and that's got us where we are today. We're a 25-person organization based out of central London, supported 8,000 students from low-income backgrounds into top universities. We're doing a lot of work now to get students into top employers, and we work with HSBC, KPMG, Morgan Stanley, some of these big blue chip employers in the UK. But that all has only been made possible from that initial startup from the student bedroom, where I had to really think deeply about how do I make my 200 quid from my student loan go as far as possible, and how do I get creative about the lack of resources I've got to try and do something a little bit different in the sector.
Wow, and you mentioned earlier about Guy Hands, and you also mentioned about the top employers. When did you feel that this was really taking off?
I think the real difficult thing about creating a startup is there's a lot of randomness in what you're doing, and you've got to continue. You've got to be really focused on executing the strategy. You've just got to focus on nailing your kind of basics. Do one goal, move to another, and then another. But you never know when your big breakthrough is going to come, because the nature of early stage stuff is there's a lot of randomness, there's a lot of luck involved, and it's really difficult to get your timing right. And for me, I remember distinctly in the first couple of months of the organization seeing loads of people signing up to the platform, some incredible engagement levels, and people getting offers to all these top universities. I still couldn't find a way to financially fund and sustain what I was doing. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, a journalist in the Times came across what I was doing online, and I had a big feature in the Times newspaper. And then I was overwhelmed with emails from people who wanted to find a way to kind of help me, support me, mentor me, to turn what I'd sort of built as a product into a proper business. So I moved down to London, and I started raising investment for what I was doing. So I kind of benefited from a little bit of luck in terms of that Times article, which was kind of the first domino falling over in the process. But that luck only came about because of the months of kind of tireless work that came beforehand in terms of just executing on the very sort of well-defined strategy that I had. So the thing with startup is you never know when you're going to get that lucky break. So you just got to be relentless about execution, and you've got to just keep going, and the luck eventually will come.
Wow. I'll remind myself of that. Yes. And so how does, you mentioned that Zero Gravity helps students get into university, and also helps the top employers. So how do you actually do that? And I know you said that it's a tech platform that does that.
Sure. So let's say you're a 16-year-old student living in Sunderland in the UK. You might find out about Zero Gravity on TikTok through one of our TikTok content creators. We've got hundreds of students who are talking about their Zero Gravity journeys on TikTok. And so you might hear about zero gravity through there. You sign up to the app. It takes sort of 60 seconds to sign up, and then you're on the app and you get connected with a mentor, a current undergrad at university who's studying the same subject you want to study, and the same institution, who can mentor you through the platform in weekly one-to-one sessions, and that gets you, familiarized with the application process, the subject, and some of the things you should be thinking about, the skills you need to build, the things you need to read. We also run masterclasses through the platform as well. So these are kind of experts in the areas you want to go into, who do live sessions. So it might be someone from UCAS doing a session on how to write a compelling personal statement, or an admissions officer at a university talking about their particular application system and what they look for. It might be the current students at university doing a kind of day in the life video. This is what it means to be a student at an Imperial University. And then finally, we've also got like a membership community on the platform as well, where you can connect with fellow students who are going on a similar journey to you. And I think that's really important, because I think especially for a lot of socially mobile students, they're kind of the most ambitious people in their school, in their local area. Often their parents haven't been to university. And it can feel very lonely going through that process, which is why the community aspect, I think, of what we do is so important. It just creates that tailwind behind everyone. And all of these different features now are also enhancing with artificial intelligence to increase the impact of what we're doing. So we've got an AI coach in the platform as well, which acts as that kind of like mentor in your pocket, which you can turn to anytime, anywhere, to get real-time info on university research, things to read, helping you answer some of those like the very sort of basic rudimentary questions that you have. So we're just focused on using technology to kind of deliver at unparalleled scale, like things that people know work, mentorship, content, community. Like, these aren't ideas I've created. Everyone knows these things work. It's just, how do you make them engaging and how do you scale them? And that's why we've built technology to do that. But the end result is, for students who use zero gravity, it boosts your chance of getting into a highly selective university by 40% versus comparable applicants. And for universities like Oxbridge, for instance, it 2x's your chance of getting a place versus comparable applicants. And the reason why it's so effective is, we take our students on a journey, a long-term journey, where we build their knowledge, their skills, their confidence over time, rather than the kind of classic approach of a lot of schools and organizations, which is like give people a little bit of help right at the end of a process, a mock interview, a mock admissions test. And it's really difficult to make a big impact with that approach, because it is so last minute. Some of this stuff you need to build, slowly, gently, incrementally over time, and that's the way our platform works.
Sure. I remember hearing that one of the reasons why private schools got so many people into top universities was that they sort of take as a given that they would get the really good grades, and then they really focused on the interview prep, the personal statements from a really young age.
Even like the basic thing, that like one of the reasons private schools are so powerful is due to culture, right? Is in it instills in you, right from year 7 when you walk in the door, that you are somebody who can be the master of the universe, and that identity is constantly reaffirmed every day when you go into school. And you've got all these other people around you who also feel the same, are ambitious, they've got parents with very impressive jobs, great professional networks. So your kind of ambition is constantly reaffirmed, that it's no wonder that private educated people are often like very confident and they're very at ease with their environment, because that's the culture that they've been part of. And it's really, really powerful. And that's one of the things that we thought on our platform, like how do we give people some of that magic of being able to kind of be confident in these new environments in which they're going into. And that's not something that can be taught overnight. That is something that takes time and effort, and especially for the students we're working with, we really push them to be proud of their identities, their roots, and where they're from, because that makes you stand out. You shouldn't try and cover up your accent or try and cover up some of your interests, which are derived from where you're from. Like, you should really like lean into your own identity, because it gives you a really clear narrative that is interesting to other people. And no one just wants to meet a carbon copy person, right? So yeah, we really try and work with the students to make them feel proud of where they're from, but also comfortable about the new environments they're stepping into.
Oh, like you did at Oxford. Yes. Yes. And just two more questions. Was there any sort of assumptions that you made that even though it was very successful, that they turned out not to be quite true? Or was there any pivots that you made along the way with zero gravity?
I think in terms of assumptions that I made, I think a key one was just about my approach to getting people interested in what I was doing. Because I'd come out of the university system, I thought the way to kind of inspire people and get them interested in zero gravity was to kind of explain in real depth the kind of theoretical beauty of the technology we were building, because ultimately that's what I saw as the kind of real that USP value add of the organization. It was the sort of proprietary tech we were developing. And I kind of realized over time that people are interested in the tech, but that's not the real driver of their interest. The people are interested in the stories that comes out of the platform. They're people who've used the product and it's transformed their life. There's someone who was from a council estate in Stoke, they used zero gravity, and now they've got an offer to study at Cambridge University. It was those sort of stories that really resonated with people and spurred people's interest. So I kind of changed my style to kind of talking like less about the proprietary tech and its intricate beauty, more about the kind of the stories of people who've actually benefited from our service. And it sounds quite a basic insight, but I think university teaches people to be overly theoretical. And actually, one of the key skills you need in any organization, but especially as a startup founder, is the kind of the power of storytelling, like knowing how to tell the story of what you're building in your organization in a way that resonates with people and creates a really simple, clear narrative so people can understand what you're doing and emotionally connect with it. So that's something that I've had to sort of pivot in terms of my approach, that over time, if you see like any of the kind of newspaper interviews we've done or sort of podcasts have been on, like I constantly talk about the stories of people who've used the platform rather than talk about how beautiful the JavaScript is that we use to develop some of the features.
And just final question, if you had to go back and you had 5 minutes of a younger Joseph at Oxford who's wondering whether he should be loud and proud of his Yorkshire accent, what would you say to that younger Joseph, Joe?
Yeah, I'd say embrace your identity. I'd also say it's going to be hard, like making that journey from a kind of an area of low opportunity to a top university is not only hard in terms of having to define the odds to get there, but actually feel like you belong there is another challenge in and of itself. And like imposter syndrome is a really difficult thing to feel, but it's also kind of like a consequence of success in a way. Like if you're not feeling in any imposter syndrome in what you're doing, it's probably because you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Like you constantly want to be taking yourself outside your comfort zone and going into environments where you do feel a little bit uncomfortable at first. And even though that's a really kind of anxiety inducing thing to experience, it's just all part of the process of you becoming a bigger and better person and being able to achieve your goals. So if you're feeling that sense of imposter syndrome, you've just got to embrace it as a short-term thing to battle and deal with. It's not necessarily a sign that you're going to feel like that forever.
Well, that's interesting.
So go on.
A certain amount of imposter syndrome is actually a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and if you're not experiencing any change in your sense of identity, then it usually means that you're playing it very safe. And so it's completely natural to feel a bit like you don't completely belong or you don't completely understand who you are. And it takes time. These are not things you can solve overnight. And I think I felt at the age of 18, like almost there was something maybe a little bit wrong with me because I was going through some of these these kind of emotions. But like looking back now, that was completely natural. I'd tell my younger self, like, look, you're not going to figure it out overnight. Just kind of go with the flow, and you'll find a way to make it work.
Gotcha. Gotcha, Joe. That was fascinating. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thank you.
No worries at all, Max. Thanks for inviting me on.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that episode with Joe as much as I enjoyed recording it. Be sure to check out Zero Gravity, whether you're a university student who would like to mentor students from low opportunity backgrounds to help them realize their ambition, or whether you know a student who could benefit from Zero Gravity. And if you haven't already done so, feel free to sign up to Jobs for Students, a free weekly newsletter which helps you find jobs around your campus as well as internships and graduate jobs. Thank you for listening to this episode of Podcast for Students.